Oh, 'tis the season, 'tis the season. 1,300 miles later, a whole nother season, and here we are again, gearing up for season number 2 on the 19 Alpha. And then there's this beautiful thing, but we'll get to that in a minute. Later, I'll end up pulling in the 2020s, the 165 and the 154. But as of right now, we're going to start here and give my full season, end of season, getting ready for the next season review. Things that went wrong, things I can live with, things I just can't fucking stand. As far as the engine, even after a little bit of water ingestion, it still tests out fine on compression. Biggest deal was putting a better bumper on it. But otherwise, that's pretty good. So we got to put the skid plate on. I'm just not feeling it right now. Things that really piss me off is this is the actual panel where the exhaust goes. And the stock exhaust was melting on the inside. That's why for this season went with a different exhaust. But that was a little bit irritating, but no big deal. The other thing is, got rid of all the size decals except for the Alpha 1 and the C-Tech 2. Got rid of the rest of them. They were peeling. I didn't like them. I didn't want to put them back on and have the same issue again for this season. So just kept the ones that ended up staying nice, which was just those two. As far as belt life, this machine has 1,300 miles on it at 85 hours. And I don't know if you can see it. The belt's shot and pretty well delaminating, but the sled was still moving when it came in here. You could tell on the bottom end it was slipping a little bit, but otherwise that, no real big deal. Changing belts on these is extremely easy. And the clutches all look good. Got them all cleaned up, lubricated the pins and everything, so that's all good to go. As far as the shocks go, loved them. The Fox shocks are way better than the Walker Evans. Like, I honestly cannot stand, not even the fucking velocity shocks on the Polaris. They're just fucking garbage. I really wish, that's the only thing I wish Polaris would change. Besides their A-arms and them shocks, that's really my only bitch about Polaris. As far as this thing, it did really good. It's a completely different sled compared to a Polaris, but it's fine. Jumped it a whole bunch and didn't have a single issue with the monorail cracking, fracturing, or breaking in half. It's just not an issue. I hit a culvert doing about 35 and flew off the sled and still didn't break it. The biggest deal is you got to keep your front shock higher on the PSI than they recommend. That's the biggest deal. Some people won't like how it rides. Loosen up your rear shock, stiffen this one up. You'll have a lot less issues with any kind of braking, because what's happening is people are running real low PSI on these and they're bottoming out against the frame and they're breaking the rail. Otherwise that, no issues. Another thing that just absolutely pisses me off, and it doesn't matter what it is, if it's made by Arcticat, it has this problem. That shit's so fucking annoying. I wish they fixed that. It's really aggravating. Did the oil change on it. Did new plugs on it. Did new belt on it. What else? Put the new exhaust on it. Put a new bumper on it. Skid plate. Cleaned it. Oh, these little jack shaft nuts. They go on right here where your brake goes, or the actual dismounts. I hope they're not the actual locating nuts for the jack shaft, and that the jack shaft wasn't moving inside the chain case. That'd be a real bummer. I did notice quite a bit of aluminum in the chain case when I drained it, which it does have a drain plug. Everybody says they don't have a drain plug. They have a drain plug. Anyway, I noticed that there was a lot of extra metal inside the chain case. Not huge chunks, but definitely the oil had lots of metal in it. I'm hoping it didn't trash the chain case. Really should take that chain case cover off, but being as it still runs fine, I don't really want to fuck with it. So, yeah, we'll drain the ones on the 2020 and see how much metal's in them. Hopefully it's got about the same amount. As far as power and everything, the 800 really isn't too bad. It's definitely no 850 Rotax or even the RMK motor, but being as it's such a bulletproof motor, I'll let it slide. I will say that the 2020s feel a little bit more, not so much more powerful, but more responsive. I think when they changed the cylinder heads and the jugs, they really did do something just with getting a little bit more response out of this engine. But nothing you're going to notice, nothing you're going to be able to prove on horsepower. Just my personal opinion on how they feel different back to back. Now, I will probably pull in the 2021 165-inch Mountain Cat. It's in red. When I actually go and pick it up from the dealership with all this COVID shit, I haven't really had time. But there is a 2021 Alpha Mountain Cat on the way to review also, along with this brand new 2021 Pro RMK 850, 155. We'll go into depth on that one in a separate video and give you my first impressions on a Polaris, even though I'm really a cat guy. I will say, noticing side by side, the Polaris sits a lot higher, and the Arctic Cat, the A-arms are built onto the sled, and on the Polaris, the A-arms and the suspension is attached underneath the sled. So these sleds sit quite a bit different. The Arctic Cat's a lot lower, Polaris is a lot higher. It's just an observation. You don't need to be rocket science. Running boards on these suck, but not enough for me to want to cut the tunnel and change them right now. That's really about it. Didn't have really any issues with this sled. Did really good. Just the BS with the jack shaft. That's kind of annoying. I have no clue why 2 locking nuts would back off. The stickers were annoying because they kept getting tore up. I literally put 2 sets of stickers on here before I finally just gave up. So we're keeping it with just 3 stickers: the C-Tech 2, the Alpha 1 sticker, and the 154, and this right here. But otherwise the stickers can get fucked. I'm tired of them. Oh, the tunnel. I don't know if it's like this with all sleds, but man, the powder coat on this tunnel just wasn't the greatest. I mean, it did get rode pretty hard. It did get abused pretty hard. It was trailered and left outside all for the off season, but I really do think that should last a little bit better. We'll see how the Polaris powder coat holds up. But otherwise, that's been a great sled. I will say, on hard pack and real powder days, if you don't get your foot placement right on the running boards and you really goose it, the ass end washes out real bad compared to a twin rail. But that's just part of it. Man, that's really it. I'm trying to find everything I can to complain about this sled. I'm just not having much to complain about. It was a really good sled. Didn't give me a lot of issues. Looks really good. The clutching on it, as far as my opinion, is way better because it's an auto tensioning secondary. That auto tensioning secondary really helps that belt go the distance, in my opinion. Some people may not like my opinion, that's fine. Having a clutch that auto tensions instead of a manual tension like these is kick-ass. I mean, these belts, I had no trouble getting that 1,300 miles out of that belt for, you know, a duration of a season. So, yeah, been very happy with the belting and the clutching. Changed a couple of things for this season. ran a compression test and everything. Everything looks good. We'll pull in the 2020s. I do have a couple specific gripes about the 2020s, but that's about it. We'll go over here and talk about this sled now. I picked this sled up kind of on impulse, a lot like I did the 2020 our 2020 Alpha 1. Excuse me, 2021. I don't know why I keep saying 2020. I wish 2020 was fucking over with all this COVID shit, but regardless. Picked this sled up the other day. Went ahead and put new control arms on it. Put the bumper on. Gotta have that. A little sticky. Got the new can on. That thing sounds badass. It's an Ultra Q, just like the one on the Arctic over there. One thing I still want to do to it is get the Fox shocks. I hate these walkers. I ain't even rode it yet, and I can already tell you I'm not gonna like those at all compared to air shocks. They're just junk. The walker velocities are at least bearable, but these are I just hate them so much. I really do. I cannot stand that shock. It's flimsy, and I don't like it. It doesn't ride right. It doesn't feel right. Just right out of the box, I don't like the shocks they put on these sleds. As far as working on them, I mean, once you get the hood and the side panels off and get your tuning pipe out of the way, they're pretty easy to work on. I will say that the bottom spring from the Y pipe to the tuning pipe is kind of a bitch to get to unless you have the right tool. Otherwise, it's really easy to work on. The only thing I am concerned about, and simply because I just haven't ran many of these sleds extensively, and I'm kind of curious to see how I have a beginner rider going on this sled, how well it's going to work out. Leave in the comments, how well does that manual tensioning secondary work out? Does it work out pretty good? Does it save belts? Does it burn up belts unless you tension it right? You know, what's kind of the proper way to keep up with the tensioning on it? You know, the dealership went over it, but they didn't really make me believe that it was going to be super great. I do like how on the main bulkhead, or the nun, it's two pieces of solid cast aluminum that are clamshelled together. I think that's really interesting. But otherwise, this is kind of my first Polaris that I'll ever be able to see the ins and outs of. New rider picked this up yesterday. He's real excited about it. I'll probably end up doing all the maintenance on this sled, so I'll get to see just what all these Polarises are all about. It's got the quick drive on it, which I may end up liking more than a chain drive, just because if this chain drive goes out because these jack shaft nuts back off, I'm going to be pissed, because that chain drive does not look fun to fuck with. Doesn't look too hard to fuck with, but doesn't look fun. And yeah, I'm curious to see how a brand new Polaris does up against a 2021 Arctic Alpha 1 as far as everyday riding, hard riding. How do they do? How do the engines hold up? Really curious about the 850. They don't make an 800 no more. But I'll say right out of the box, it seems like the 850 is a lot better than the RMK 800. That RMK 800 was really, in my opinion, lacking on some power. But we'll see, man. Looks good. I think my new rider's going to enjoy it. And we'll get back to you on that one. That'll be its own separate video. Right now, this video was really to talk about the Alpha 1. We'll get the 2020s in here later today. And then later this week, probably with some snowfall, hopefully, we'll get the 2021 hardcore, or the 2021 Alpha in here, and give you a breakdown on what they've changed, which it doesn't look like they changed anything, especially with the lawsuit with Ski-Doo. So yeah, that's pretty much where I'm going to leave this video off. Ciao.